Sting, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are in, dare I say it, a sunny London today. It's going to start raining as soon as I say that. I came to your show with Sting last night. It was amazing. Well done.
Thanks so much for coming.
It was, wonderful to see. You know what? I was thinking, it's just wonderful to see someone touring in a band playing harmonica. And I mean, I know that's, but the only other example of, a well-known band that I could think off the top of my head was Mickey Raphael with Willie Nelson. And I interviewed Mickey, lovely guy. There aren't many guys who get to just play harmonica in a band. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely Mickey's a huge influence on me, and he's kind of the guy that I always look to for kind of guidance on that big stage. And he has a lot of great lessons to offer, especially that kind of playing less, sympathetic coloring, and it all translates, I think.
I think when you listen to him, you can understand why someone would want him in their band, because he's not just there to play some awesome harp solo, although he's perfectly capable. It's serving the song, and I think you're doing a similar thing with Sting.
Right, and it's so cool that he was the one who kind of came up with the majority of those parts. Like for me, it was more so kind of here's the here's what you got to do. But I respect the hell out of Mickey. He's just such a tremendous kind of patron of this instrument, and I try to do my best to think about him every night when I play.
So the set, the current set with Sting, is it kind of note for note that you've been told? I assume there's bits of improvisation in there?
Yeah, so there's, the great thing about Sting is that there's Harmonicacentric songs, which is not a very common occurrence with popular artists. Unless that person is the main harmonica player, so Stevie Wonder being a good example. But there are certain songs that are harmonica-centric that I do have to play note for note. So, Brand New Day being a big one, Shape of My Heart, If I Ever Lose My Faith in You. There's songs that are, you have to play it the way that it was recorded, just because that's what people know. Now, these other songs that are kind of derived from Brain from Marsalis saxophone parts, or even violin parts, Wraps Around Your Finger, If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free, you want to play as close to, but you also don't want to lose your identity when you play. So there's a little bit of space there to kind of be your own person. There's sections of the songs, like in the chorus of If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free, that famous Branford part that you have to play correctly. But for the solo, you can go off on it's jazz. You can go off on tangents.
Yeah. So you're playing the chromatic almost all the time with Sting. So for anyone watching, briefly, what's the difference between the kind of the diatonic, the blues harmonica, and the chromatic?
I would say more so. From a technical standpoint, from a breathing and embouchure standpoint, they're kind of similar in that that connection to your diaphragm and everything. Theoretically, it's essentially playing a harmonica in 12 positions. So that's the big difference for me, is knowing exactly where the notes lay out. That's the when you learn a pattern on the diatonic. It's very easy to, if you're playing an A harp, to go to a C harp, and you play that's the breath pattern. But with a chromatic, it's much more so you have to spend some time and actually learn the scales, learn the arpeggios, before you can actually start to improvise, which is frustrating for a lot of people, and I think that's part of the reason that there's a kind of negligence of the chromatic nowadays. But it is a very unique tone, and I think it's well worth it to if you are a blues harmonica player, it's well worth it to explore it.
Do you feel more comfortable on one than the other?
I started on diatonic, and I think my mouth likes the diatonic a little bit more. But I've just sunk a lot of time into playing chromatic, and I think over the years my playing style on the diatonic has switched a lot so from my influence from the chromatic. Yeah, I would say I love them both equally.
Yeah.
They're just, other sides of the coin.
Yeah. When you go back to the diatonic, you're like, why aren't the notes there? Or you overblow, right? So
I do overblow. I try to use it sparingly. And, when I do play diatonic, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I asked. Yeah, I suppose it's that thing of, with the chromatic, all the notes are there. Like I was talking to, we have a saxophonist in one of my bands, and she said, "Oh, teach me," we had a 15-minute break. She said, "Teach me the harmonica." I told her everything I know in 15 minutes. That's it. But I was sort of explaining the missing notes, and I was like, "Well, you can find them, but then you've got to learn how to find them." And she was like, "I couldn't deal with an instrument that doesn't have all the notes, or easily accessible kind of thing."
Right.
So I suppose I was asking now, you're so proficient on the chromatic. If you go back to the diatonic, is it like, why aren't the notes there?
Yeah, I think it's familiar territory on the diatonic, and like for the majority of the things that I would play on the diatonic, I don't feel like I'm lacking anything. Like again, that Mickey Raphael sympathetic coloring kind of thing, those nice big fat chords. There's things you can do on the diatonic that you can't do on the chromatic. For example, chords being a big one. So yeah, I kind of need to readjust a little bit. But no, it's my baby. It's what I started with.
Yeah. There's just something about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about the chromatic as well, though. Like you said, the tone, and it suits, certainly the songs you play with Sting. It's a very distinctive sound.
Right.
It's a beautiful sound.
Right.
So when you're not touring with Sting, you've got your own blues band, right?
I have guys that I play with in Boston, like pickup kind of things, and I'm in the process right now of trying to write some more material, work with this great horn section in Boston, and yeah, just trying to kind of find my own thing. For years I was just playing. I've been playing with Sting now for on and off for about 5 years, and yeah, just trying to kind of find my own avenue.
What's your approach to teaching? I get the feeling you kind of understand a lot of the theory behind, what you're playing. We talked a bit earlier, and you mentioned writing charts. Do you kind of teach in quite a theoretical way, or like, what's your approach?
I think that for harmonica, if you throw too much theory too quickly, it kind of people want to back up. So for me, like I want to when I'm teaching, the first thing I want to kind of work in terms of operation. So the first thing I start with is breath control, embouchure. I think those are things that are very, especially if you're playing chromatic and coming from the diatonic, I think it's important. So breath control, embouchure. It also kind of plays into let's play what's familiar. So like if you are a blues player and playing third position, and then slowly from that, because that's most of my students, that's what I start with is third position. Slowly let's add in a little bit of theory. So like if you take 2 draw for instance on a C chromatic, minor third, but if you put the button in major third, that's the first thing I'll always start people with. It's like that kind of will spark a little bit of interest. Like, okay, well, what's the note behind 5 draw? Or, how do I string these 2 things together? Oh, that's a phrase. And then it kind of like, it's a domino effect that people need to want to learn more about the chromatic. I think that's one of the big issues. And I think the way you get there is by introducing very small things. At a certain point, someone will say, okay, like, let's get more theoretical. So I think that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah. So how about your own learning path? Did you have teachers? What was your approach to learning the things?
So I kind of come from the YouTube school. I started playing harmonica when I was 14, give or take. And I started on diatonic. When I first started playing, like, my three biggest teachers were Adam Gusso, Ronnie Shellist, and Jason Ricci. Those were I'm of that school.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I had been playing for a couple of years and was really kind of trying to seek out more teachers in and around Boston. And, you know, I found a great teacher who was also a chromatic player, this guy Mike Turk, who's a great jazz, like, of the toots kind of school. And he was the one who really kind of introduced me to thinking about not just the chromatic, but the diatonic in a more theoretical way. Like, not just playing, you know, this blues lick or learning this little Walterism. And that really kind of opened my eyes. And this is why when I teach people nowadays, like Mike did for me that, let me show you a little bit so that you want to know more. Because I found that what he was showing me was having a dramatic difference. And it was just like little thing. But it was making a dramatic difference. And that led me, of course, and at the time I was listening to, like, you know, William Clark, Paul DeLay, Stevie Wonder was a big influence on me. And that made me want to learn more so in the way of chromatic. And, you know, I had played a little bit in high school. I played in jazz band, and I, you know, knew a little bit of theory, like piano, and I played bass a little bit. So that was also very helpful when I switched over to playing more chromatic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, this idea that the current generation of harmonica players and the next generation, YouTube will be the first thing that anyone's seen, you know, and obviously if you talk to the older guys, it's like, we never had any of that, no one was giving us all the answers kind of thing.
Right.
It's interesting that, you know, it's just that anyone who wants to learn anything now, it's like Google it or, you know, look for a YouTube video.
Yeah. Yeah, you can become a rocket scientist.
Yeah, yeah, just like spend a morning watching YouTube and you know your rocket science. But it sounds like, you know, you were doing other things. You were playing bass, piano, drums, you know, in school, and that must have given you a well-rounded appreciation of what music is, rather than just kind of, I can play some notes on my instrument. You know?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I first started playing harmonica, it was that. Like, let me just... like, it was all that kind of stuff. But, you know, at a certain point, in, like, you know, as a student of this instrument, you make an organic curve at one point to, okay, like, let me learn a little bit more theoretical kind of stuff. I think that was what was so great about guys like William Clark and Paul DeLay, is they, you know, started as traditional players, and they could still play that fantastically. But, like, if you chart William Clark's career, like, you can hear in his music that he started to, you know, more jazzy stuff, more kind of on that swing band kind of style. I really think that's the blueprint for how to progress.
Yeah. When I listen to Paul DeLay, especially, I love Paul DeLay, the songs are so distinctive and they're just good. They're good songs. I want to listen to them again and again. And the harmonica fits in there, you know, and it's that combination of the two where the harmonica sounds right. It's like he makes it sound right. It doesn't sound like, oh, I'm shoehorning in some harmonica in here because that's my instrument, you know.
Right.
And beautiful chromatic playing. You know?
Yeah, man. And you know what's so interesting? I always use this as a thing with Paul DeLay, is what I loved most about him was how he exited the notes. And, you know, technique, you know, obviously is a very important thing, but the way that Paul used it, like that kind of, like he kind of like pulled really quickly, like I never really heard anyone else do that. And that was really an interesting thing. And, you know, on the chromatic, he does all those kind of things too. But I thought that was a very interesting, like, oh, okay, let me try that. And that, how I entered and exited the notes ended up being a very important part of my chromatic playing. Dynamics, tone, all that stuff. So he's if you're kind of done listening to the older, like the Little Walter and Sonny Boy, I would highly recommend Paul DeLay.
Did you ever get to see him play or meet him?
No, man. You know, I've only this is the issue of being like someone of this generation, is I didn't get to see all those guys. I got to see Cotton one time. It was right before or a couple of years before he passed. He was playing a show in Massachusetts. I got to see, who else did I get to see? I saw Magic Dick one time, and I saw Charlie Musselwhite one time. And, you know, I've seen Billy Branch, and I've seen a couple guys like that, but I always really wanted to see Gary Primich, William Clark, and Paul DeLay. I thought that would have been so cool. What actually got me into chromatic was I saw Stevie Wonder live, and it was funny enough, a show that he was playing with Sting. And he was playing the song, he played Brand New Day, but he was playing Fragile. And he just had this beautiful, like, moving kind of thing that he was playing on the chromatic that I had never heard anyone, I had never seen a chromatic before that. I had heard it, but I think I didn't register that was what it was. But he was playing all this kind of like Arabic sounding stuff, like all that kind of that stuff. And I just thought that was so cool. But yeah.
What chromatic is this? What have we got there?
This is the I believe it's called 280C. Just like standard 16-hole chromatic. I've always played these. I played for a while the new like Hohner 64X, but I always come back to this just because the way the mouthpiece feels for me, and I like the bendability of it.
Yeah. Sounded beautiful. I mean, I was just sent me away somewhere then when you were listening to that. That's gorgeous. I think that's something, you know, with Stevie Wonder. He's just got such a beautiful tone and gets the soul on the chromatic that I think people, you know, I would admit to being myself, especially in the past, scared of the chromatic. Diatonic players worry that somehow they'll lose that soul, and I think by playing chromatic, and I think you just have to listen to someone like Stevie Wonder or like yourself, and it's there, you know, like it's a different instrument, of course, and does different things, you know, has different strengths and weaknesses, but like the feel is there, the soul is there.
Right. And I think also, like, you know, it's like Stevie has such a big domain over the chromatic. Like most people like who play chromatic, it's like, oh, like you sound like Stevie. Which is interesting, like, because I feel like as diatonic players also, like, everyone's be like, oh, you sound like Little Walter. But that's always what people tell me is like, oh, you must like Stevie Wonder. Nobody mentions Toots. No. Like, Toots is like one of the best kept like harmonica secrets.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everyone has a little bit of anxiety going into chromatic, and you know, but I feel like it's the same anxiety that goes into like if you've been playing second position all your whole life, and then you like someone shows you George Smith, and you're like, oh, like I want to know about third. It doesn't sound great at the beginning, and you just are figuring it out. But it's, you know, if you put it as a habit, like let me play a little bit of it every day or listen to a little bit of it every day, it just becomes a part of you.
Yeah. That's funny what you say about Toots, because it's an interesting thing being a harmonica player, and I'm sure this is the case with other instruments as well, but the greatest harmonica players, and the ones that all of us harp nerds kind of know about, no one else in the world knows who they are, apart from, as you say, they've heard of Stevie Wonder, and then they've heard of Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and then it's like, have they heard of any others? Probably not, you know.
Right.
And then we all get together and talk about these guys that no one even knows they exist, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of our own. This is the great thing about the harmonica community, is we're all so kind of tight knit, which is you know, a great thing. But yeah, and you know, that's part of why I love what I do right now, is just bring more attention to it. And you know, with that kind of comes a little bit of you know, I have to represent it well, like you know, same thing with Mickey Raphael, like don't overplay, like have a voice, color it, texturize it, all that kind of stuff. Make people forget the stereotype of the Bob Dylan thing. I feel like that's the only way to progress people to want to, like, people who aren't harmonica players to listen to more harmonica.
That there's moments in the show with Sting when you get to come forward and play something, and I think people react. They certainly did last night. React really well, and they're like, "Yeah, it's the harmonica guy," you know.
I'm always like, is it from a place of like, yeah, this is great, or what the hell is that?
Like the guy next to me, because you go off for a few tunes that they don't need, and then when you came back on, the guy next to me kind of, he was there with his girlfriend and whatever. He goes, "Oh, the harmonica guy's back!" Like they've obviously enjoyed it.
Right. I mean, it's such a great crowd at the Palladium too, and we've had so much fun there the last couple days. But yeah, I mean, 4 people, like, especially in that lineup of musicians, it's a weird, like, if there's nothing else, like, if that's kind of the horn of the band, it's asking a lot. So you have to, treat it respectfully.
Yeah.
And, the thing with the harmonica, and we were talking about this before, but, like, it's very auxiliary. Like, it's not like a violin or a saxophone that can kind of fit in seamlessly anywhere, because it's so tonally unique. It makes a big statement when it comes out on the stage. So the job of the harmonica player is to, like, essentially with great power comes great responsibility, to borrow from the Spider-Man movies. So you have to treat it like that.
Yeah. Do you ever use any effects, or do you just play clean?
I mean, I've not really experimented a ton. Sting used to have a violin player, this guy Peter Tikel, who would play through effect pedals, and it sounded really cool. But, since I started playing, I guess from not wanting to annoy anyone, I was just like, yeah, I'll just play into the PA, a little bit of reverb, and we'll kind of go from there. I mean, I feel like a big part of my job description is that Stevie Wonder style tone, and he just right through the PA, and what you get is him. So I try to model that as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. How close to the Stevie Wonder sound are you expected to get? Would Sting be like, that one you need to make it sound more like Stevie, or whatever,
I mean, so like for like Brand New Day, like, because that's such a quintessential Stevieism, you have to get pretty close. And so much of Stevie's sound is in that tight puckering kind of effect. And also, like, his use of vibrato, all the great things that go into Stevie. So, like, the beginning of that song of Brand New Day, you have to play pretty damn close. For the rest of the song, like, I've studied Stevie enough that I kind of know the isms. It's like if you study any player enough, like, like, if you're studying, like, Paul DeLay, like, that's a ism, that's a Paul DeLay ism. So with the solo in Brand New Day, I was kind of able to have free reign, but under the umbrella of it's still Stevie's part.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And then when you're playing with your own band, or pickup guys, who are your kind of inspirations in terms of that style?
I always come back to like, in terms of being a band leader, I always come back to William Clark. I think that he just, obviously technically and passion-wise, he was like one of the best. But it was his ability to lead a band that I always, and like cue people, and like, these are where the stops are, and there's only a couple surviving William Clark videos, but every time you see him, he's just like. So I always try to approach it like that. Like, I try to be a good band leader, and that's one of the big lessons I've taken from working with a guy like Sting is, he's just a master band leader. And part of being a good band leader is, showcasing your players as well as you can. So, Kim Wilson's also great at this, and like, he'll kind of, part of playing with a band is like being able to put the harmonica down, and I think if you are the front man, I think that, allowing your guitarist to play or your horns to play, I think is a good place to lead a band from. So that's what I try to do, is I try to, try to incorporate as much accompaniment playing in as possible, but I also want my guys to do their thing. And again, because the harmonica is so powerful, you use it sparingly. Like you find where it works, and then when it works, you play the hell out of it.
It's something over the years that I have, at times, I've found, becoming a band leader, that then my attention is more on, cueing the band, that side of things, being the band leader, learning how to be that front man. And then I've almost felt bad about that, because I'm like, am I neglecting learning the instrument? Like that's my craft. But then I've come to just realise that's my job, that's part of my job. And the learning the instrument, working on the instrument, is something that, of course, is part of that, but it's only one part of that.
Right.
All that other stuff is so important. And you go to see a band, you don't go because that guy's going to play harmonica non-stop all night. You go because you want to see a band, don't you?
Right.
You want to be entertained. You want a set that is interesting and varied.
Yeah, it's a very intense color, and regardless of how well you can play, the less you use it, the more it's this classic, like, less is more mentality, but I like what Jason says about it. You just accentuate everything, accentuate nothing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the great harmonica players, they were great sidemen in their own right, but they were great band leaders. And that definitely informed a lot of why we love them so much.
That thing, accentuate everything, accentuate nothing. If this sofa stands out against this blue wall really nicely, but if absolutely everything was this kind of red sort of colour, it would be boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, then it has no value.
Yeah.
It's only in the contrast.
Right. It would be like you were living in like some kind of
It'd be horrible.
weird
You won't get
void.
to see anything. But it's a discipline as well, though, isn't it? Because you like the sound of something, then you want to do it the whole way through every song, all the time, and you have to go, no, actually, that stops it having any value.
Right. Yeah. And I think, that's also like something that I think is important to teach students, is like, just because you can play all the time doesn't mean that you have to. There's a lot to be said for, learning your bass lines and accompaniment playing, but knowing when, this is like the school of Miles Davis, knowing when not to play is more important than knowing when to play.
That's definitely something, going back to Mickey Raphael, when I interviewed him, that came across, the humility and the appreciation of the fact that you are doing a job. It's not, about your ego, which, definitely something that needs to be passed on.
Yeah, to dissolve that ego. Like, I use this as a teaching thing too, because it was something that worked really well for me, and has worked well for a couple of harmonic players that I know. Is I used to box when I was younger, and there's this great thing that I read about called Frank Shamrock method, and essentially it was, this guy Frank Shamrock was a mixed martial artist, and he had this method of teaching people how to fight, where you would have one student, and that one student would essentially have three people. One person to teach, one person who was equal to them, and one person who was way better than them. And what he found was, when they would spar, teaching is like one thing that makes you a lot better. It kind of like you're enforcing things that you've learned. If you're with someone who's of equal degree or equal playability, it kind of like challenges you a little bit, and you want to like step up your game. And then obviously, to get your ego checked, getting taught by someone who's way better than you. And in doing that, you're actually able to hit, like if we're just talking about harmonica, hit it from all the sides. And that's a great way to make progress.
What's your approach to practicing the instrument?
So I think that for practice, it's a lot of people run into the issue of not either being prepared for it or not taking it seriously. And it's that classic thing of like a little bit every day ends up mattering, like the macro circumstance. What I do when I'm home, and I started doing this during COVID because I think as like kind of a way to cope with what was going on, I needed more structure in what I was doing. So I've kind of approached it from like a kind of like a self-help kind of planning thing. So every Sunday I would schedule out my practice for the week, and like 5 sessions a week, like 5 like hour sessions or so. And I would say like, these are the priorities, these are things that I want to work on. For the average player, I would always have them, sit down. First thing to focus on is, am I getting the connection with my diaphragm? Is everything like, open vessel? Is everything just clear? Embouchure relaxed. Then I would, warm up, kind of like just like get, my breath going, like really big chords and things like this. Is just diatonic I'm talking about, and chromatic, I guess. And then I would get into some scale movement, like arpeggios, things like that. And then like especially with arpeggiating chords, I think is a very important practice. Even if it's just doing the 1, the 4, and the 5, I think that's an important practice for people to start to learn. And then you have to incorporate some kind of jam in there. Like people need to want to have. It can't just all be textbooks and piano chords. Like people need to want to just wail. So I would say like I would spend like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes like just kind of getting warmed up my embouchure and just kind of breathing through the harp. Like 20 minutes or so on scales and arpeggios, and then 20 minutes of jamming. That's it. That's all I need.
Yeah. I sometimes have students who they're really excited and proud to tell me like I do 10 hours of practice a day or something, and I think, really? Is that deliberate practice? Because I'm not sure there's anyone in the world who can practice that much every day and it'd be useful.
But we've all been there.
Yeah.
Like it's like with any skill in life. Like once you learn how to bend a note, like you're like, oh yeah, let's go. Like I need to go to the blues club. But and I used to be like that too. I used to be like, I remember Ronnie Shellis used to talk to me about this. Like I used to like practice for like 3 to 4 hours a day. I didn't get out a lot as a kid. But I remember like it got to the point that I had to like walk back the amount of practice I was doing, and in doing that, it actually, because I remember I used to get burnt out and put it down for like a month and then just not come back to it. But a little bit every day, like kind of just from like a muscle memory thing. If it's a little bit every day and you start playing the same things, your mouth is just kind of inherently going to find new little combinations.
Yeah. Do you ever do anything to kind of the kind of opposite of that almost? Like if you're getting annoyed you're playing the same lick over and over every gig or something, do you ever have to kind of work out a way to break that habit?
I always kind of go to just put it down. Because most of the time when I hit a wall creatively, I just need to go do something else. And I think people forget just how much the rest of life kind of has an effect on their playing. Like, the books you read or what's going on in the world or the music that you're listening to outside of just harmonica music. Like that's a huge thing. That's part of the reason that Sting is so good, is because he pulls from a wide range of genres, which makes him so unique. Like if you listen to Dream of the Blue Turtles and then you listen to like Soul Cages, they're so incredibly different because the musicians are different and what he was listening to at the time is different. So most of the time what I'll do if I'm in a rut is I just put it down. I'll start listening to something that's a little bit different than what I have been listening to. Like if I was listening to jazz a lot for like a month, maybe I'll switch to like listening to country. And then I'll find something there that I'm like, okay, I never thought about doing it like that.
Yeah.
And most of the time that kind of flows into the next chapter of getting better on the instrument. But if you're kind of constantly in blues land, if you're constantly like, you know, there's an endless amount you can learn from Little Walter. But if it's starting to get like, you know, I've heard these 3 chords 100 times, like 100,000 times, start to listen to some things that are outside of that, and that will influence your blues playing.
When you are playing, do you visualize anything?
You know, when I was playing diatonic, like I used to do these restriction exercises. Like I used to do just like the first 2 holes, first 3 holes, and I think that's a great way to make progress when you're improvising. So I would kind of have that a little bit in my head. With the chromatic, I don't do a ton of visualization. I think more in terms of the notes. I guess I do kind of think about like the notes on the staff kind of going down. So that's part of it. You know, on the diatonic, I don't really do a ton of that. I probably should.
So on the chromatic, are you thinking like this is an E flat note or whatever? Like unless it's like if I'm just doing like playing over like a 12 bar or something, then for the most part, because the way I think about Sting's music a lot is because the chords change so much, and even like within, like we were just talking about Fortress Around Your Heart, it's a song that, you know, changes keys 3 times in the first verse, and that's like the pattern of the song. So in that sense, you do need to think a little bit about what's behind the holes that you're playing. I think that's just something that comes organically when you first pick up the chromatic, or like when you start to get more into chromatic. But because I was learning piano pretty much at the same time that I was like getting really theoretical about the chromatic, I think that's part of the reason that my mind just goes there. Mm. So when you joined Sting's band, were you kind of given all the sheet music then, or?
It was funny because when I first initially got the offer, it was really for Brand New Day, for Shape of My Heart, for all the Harmonica-centric songs. So it wasn't like a huge feature. It was like 4 songs. But then as the tour progressed and we started adding in like If You Love Somebody Set Them Free or Wrapped Around Your Finger, he kept asking me like for like little like, can you just like try that, because there's not a horn or a violin in there. He's like, so can you like do this and this and this, and he would lay it out for me on the bass, like what he wanted me to do. And you know, I'm very lucky that I do have I've developed over the years a pretty good ear that I can pick things up pretty quickly. No, they never really. The only time I had to read off of a chart was the song Russians. That song that has that great middle section. Da, 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 da. That was the only time I had to read for that. But no, for everything else, I was able to kind of just figure it out.
Yeah, I love Russians, the song. It was great to hear it last night, obviously in not the happiest circumstances, but it's a beautiful song. I mean, he's written so many beautiful songs. Yeah.
It's funny because prior to having that cello player, come on tour with us, me and the keyboard player were playing that theme, and I was playing kind of almost like in a William Clark style, actually. Like so like the theme is like. Like that's how the theme goes, but I was playing it as like. Like that kind of thing. So it had that more fatter sound.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about that song.
No offense, but I love cello so much. I was very happy to have cello. I just love the sound of cello. I don't get to hear enough cello.
It's interesting though, like the way they like kind of like like they get that kind of like
Yeah.
tremolo kind of effect.
Yeah, yeah. That sounded really lovely. Actually, really nice. And you got a beautiful, rich tone.
That bottom octave can get a little funky. If you play a 16 hole, I'd recommend just a little bit of work on it.
Have you tried lots of different chromatics?
You know, I've I before I was aligned with Hohner, I did play like Suzuki. I played like the whatever they're called, the SCXs, and I've played like the Gregoire Marais one, like the 12 hole. But I always come back to this just because I think the mouthpiece, it's like with horn players. Like, I remember Mike Church told me this a long time ago that like it's good to just play one style of chromatic because your mouth just gets so. Same thing with like learning a style of diatonic. Like, you know, if you play a special 20, it's different than playing a marine band. But your mouth adjusts to that mouthpiece, and like if you start to play something like if you play a different mouthpiece, different style of chromatic, then it can kind of be difficult to translate. So I always come back to this. I also think for that Stevie tone, because this was the kind of one that he was using, like when he recorded Brand New Day, he was using a 280C. So I always come back to that, and that bendability that's so important when you're playing Stevie kind of things, I think is really important.
Okay. So other chromatics maybe wouldn't give you that same bendability?
Yeah, but again, it's like a comfort thing. It's like I for the most part, play like when I'm playing diatonic Golden Melodies, which is not like a heavily used harmonica in the blues world, but I do tune them differently. I tune them to like more on the kind of compromise tuning, like the crossover. Yeah, so like, but the reason is that my mouth has just kind of adjusted to that, and like to play anything else, I would just feel a little out of whack.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, I play a lot of special 20s. I do play the harps, but I've played some other really good quality harps, and you know, I just can't I can't get them to sound the way I want them to, but it's just because I'm used to a certain instrument.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's all personal preference, and there's kind of no one, like, you know, Antonio Serrano, the great chromatic player who can play like rings around, definitely play rings around me. I'd like worship the guy. He plays just a standard whatever they're called from Hohner, like just the 12 hole like 280s.
Oh, okay.
And he's played that his whole life. It's just what works for him. Like, he could probably play a much, you know, higher quality chromatic, but it's just what works for him.
Yeah, I've seen a photo of Paul DeLay with a big river, and I played big rivers when I first started, and then I was like, I'm too good for these, I'm moving on. And then I saw that photo and was like, no. I mean, I don't know if he played them, but I thought he probably did if there's a photo of them with them. So, yeah, they're good enough for him, they're good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of players do, like Rob Paparozzi. He's a big proponent of Big River. I remember Ronnie showed me a long time ago, he had like a Big River low F sharp.
Ooh.
And I was like, where'd you get that? Because I've been looking for a low F sharp. I love that the tone of that harp. But yeah, Big River's great. Yeah. There's really, ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to the player. Yeah. And it comes down to what fits for you, and you know, that's just kind of, that's the thing. That's why it's great we have so many different models of diatonic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like being a kid in a sweet shop or something, trying a new harp, and it's great as well because you can't try before you buy. Gives you a good excuse to buy a new harmonica. It's like, well, I've got to buy one of these and, you know, try it out. Right. Oh, low F sharp. I think I've got a Suzuki for my low F sharp. I don't know why, but yeah, because I don't think I have a normal F sharp because I like the lower keys. Yeah. You know, the range of notes. I want to be able to go up the top end and still like the sound of the notes. Yeah. I like those squeaky keys. Oh, okay. Like I like, you know, whatever, E flat, F sharp.
mainly like, so a big influence on me when I was a kid was B.B. King. And you know, he had that great opening that he would always play like, and I just always loved playing that on those higher tuned harps.
Yeah.
And then you play all that major pentatonic and, you know, alternate major and minor pentatonic. But it felt like it gave me that kind of electric guitar kind of like cutting kind of sound. Yeah, no, but you will never use that F sharp. If you go to a blues jam, it's gonna be the dustiest harmonica.
Very true. Yeah.
Like that and D flat.
Yeah.
Those are the two least used harmonicas.
Yeah. So the reason I had to think, oh, is it a Suzuki I've got, is because I never use that F sharp. I actually use my D flat, strangely enough. So I use it for a couple of songs. So I use it with the Jug Band. We do a song. The bass player and the guitarist have gone back and found these recordings from the 20s and 30s and tried to recreate them as authentically as possible. And I think some of them, you know, the recording at some point it's warped and it's slightly out of tune. So I reckon with a couple of them, they've ended up putting them in the key they weren't. They will have been in C or D, you know, they put them in D flat. So I use my D flat on one, and we do something in, I suppose it would be E flat minor, and I play third position on the D flat. It's I never play it with the blues band. Why would I?
I remember I when I was leaving Boston for this last leg of the tour, I was at my last blues jam there, and I called T-Bone Shuffle, like like the traditional one, the one that was in A flat. And I was like, okay, we're gonna play an A flat, and the bassist just looked at me like, really? And I was like, yeah. No, that will. It's a very, very dusty harp.
Yeah, we've got our saxophonist in the Jug Band recently joined, saxophone and clarinet, and she's constantly complaining about songs being in guitar keys. You know, there's things in A, and I think there's a few things in D as well, which is a bit weird.
Is it alto player?
Yeah. So, she's great, but she loves complaining about guitarist keys.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. But you kind of, I felt like I needed to have a harp in every key, even though some of them I never use my B.
Yeah.
That just sits.
I love that harp.
You use a B?
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
First position, a lot of the time. I think that the top end on the B is really nice, and it's just approaching that level of not okay to play in first position. So I like to kind of live on the edge with that. No, I think that that's a great kind of challenge for the band, is to play in B. Like with Sting, like we play in B a lot, but like a lot of the songs are in B. And I think I just kind of got accustomed to using that harmonica a lot. And the tonality of it is great, and like B flat, B, and A, like those are all just tremendous. Like they can just fit anywhere.
Yeah, I love the range of notes on that kind of range of instrument. So you've got a big tour ahead, the rest of the tour with Sting, and then is it Boston? You from Boston or?
From Boston originally. Grew up downtown, kind of near Chinatown, like right across from the Common, which is, I guess, the oldest park in America. And yeah, that's where I went to college there. I went to Berkeley, it's a great city to be in, and the music scene is not the best. It's not New York, and it's not LA and New Orleans or anything like that. But the players who are there, especially with having New England Conservatory in Berkeley, it's this wonderful kind of melting pot of different styles. It's an interesting thing to be around, especially when you come off the road and you want to work with, any kind of musician. Having Berkeley down the street is a nice luxury. Yeah, man.
How to bring things down as
How to
a
bring
two-heart band. That was fun. I love that. I love getting things down to like, and I love like testing how far I can do it with the band, like in the right room at the right gig, like way down.
It's interesting there too, because like I was listening at like, you know, the phrases that I was playing, like that kind of, like I was going for that big, and then I heard you come down. I was like, let's
I'm
let's
going.
calm down.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that's part of it is just always listening.
Yeah.
And like, you know, if we're going down, we're going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's funny because I kind of probably brought it down unconsciously, and then heard you coming down in response to me coming down, and then I brought it. You know, I was like, oh, I'm going with him. You know, so it's probably
No, but that's how you communicate with this thing.
Yeah.
That's really that's great, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm just wondering how Sting found you. Did he just turn up at a jam and go, "Oh, I want this guy. You're coming on tour with me"?
No, I was at Berkeley, and he was playing like a very slimmed down charity gig at this hotel in Boston called the Revere, which is behind my house. And a bass player friend of mine, this guy Jabari, and I were kind of brought on to. So the song that I was originally brought on to play was "Fields of Gold," because it has that kind of accordion, like haunting kind of that kind of major scale run down. And I had been learning, you know, chromatic. That was when I was really like getting very theoretical about things. So I was very excited. So I played that. We played on that Roxanne, like just some like very like kind of colorful like that. If you ever hear like Branford Marsalis do it with him, that was that kind of thing. And Fragile. So those were the songs that we were playing on. And then a couple years, and then like, you know, we had each other's information and email, and you know, he contracted me again a couple years later for a show at Carnegie Hall. That was this diatonic part. That was this like kind of Mickey Raphael, let me sympathetically color kind of show. And that went really well. I had like 4 days of prep beforehand, so I was a nervous wreck. And then again, a couple years went by, and all the while during this, you know, I'm going to school. I'm trying to like let me like get as good at the harmonica as possible, because I've been playing drums at Berkeley and harmonica, but I was getting most of my work as a harmonica player. And then a couple years after the Carnegie Hall gig, we found he contracted me to play this New Year's gig, which was the Brand New Day gig, which was like the very fitting for a New Year's kind of show. And then after that was when I got the offer for to actually work with them. This is in like the beginning of 2019. So we've had kind of a on and off like gig here, gig there kind of thing. And then I really started playing with him in May of 2019. That was our first kind of as a soloist in the band. That was my first kind of thing with him.
Yeah. And what, aside from music, how do you like to spend your time?
I read a lot. That's my, I read a lot. I used to be very deep into running. And as I said before, I used to box. I still do that a lot. But reading has kind of been a big passion of mine. Writing too, is like creative writing, I think is great. I think if you're playing harmonica and that kind of visualization thing you're talking about, I think writing is very important. If you want to be a band leader, I think it's very important. Yeah, go for long walks, listen to audiobooks, that kind of thing. We're all pretty zenned out on the days that we have a show tonight, but on the days that or the hours that we're not playing, we all try to kind of do our own thing. And you know, when you're on the road for months on end, you want to be stable. You want to be kind of you know, there's an endless amount of self-destruction tales when it comes to playing harmonica, just like rock and roll in general. So you want to, you know, take care of yourself. You want to do things like that, and yeah, read and write a lot. It's really what I do. Teach too, a little bit on the road.
Oh yeah.
Zoom is one of the best things ever invented.
Yeah.
And yeah, for the most part, that's what I do.
I bet your students love kind of those Zoom chats when you're on the road and they're like, oh, my teacher's a rock star.
Right. Yeah. No, but the other thing is like you practice. Like, I know you said when you're not playing harmonica, but like, when I'm not playing chromatic, I want to play diatonic. When I'm playing diatonic, I want to play chromatic. It's just, this is how really you progress on the instrument, is it just has to be an integral part of your life. Mm-hmm. Like it's just something that you do every day. It's like you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth. Like it's just a little thing you do every day that as time goes on, you just get better and better. And, for the love of the instrument, like it's just great to fit in time to practice every day. Yeah. Why not? Howard Levy still practices, so like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, yeah. I always think that I've got kind of on my phone like a note with these kind of different things I want to practice, but there were so many things I want to practice. Like there were so many amazing players out there, so many things. You listen to one. I listen to Mitch Kashmar, and I'm like, the vibrato he gets on the top blow notes, I'm like, I want to be able to do that. Like there's these, but there's like one of those things with every player I listen to.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that.
Yeah. And like that's, harmonica ADD should be like a diagnosable thing for psychoanalysts. But yeah, and there's great merit in that. Like when I was working with Ronnie, like I was like, I just want to listen to everything, and I remember he sent me a message. He was just like, slow down, and that ended up being great. So I would have months that I would just like focus on one player, or focus on one style, and that ended up having it's like the thing we said about like practicing hours and hours and hours a day. Like if you take one player or one thing you want to learn for a week, I think that's a great metric of time to be working in.
I reckon Ronnie would be a really good influence in that regard, because he seems so kind of relaxed.
Yeah, and he's really like, not only is he such a great technical player, but he just has a great mind for the instrument itself and for musicianship in general. Like, paying attention to dynamics and tone and phrasing and I still to this day will send him videos of me playing and say, can you please just like, do you have any tips? Like if I'm playing a blues jam and like just like anything, and every time he still responds. And it's for me, it's a great way to kind of keep my ego in check. And it's I think that's a big thing with playing the harmonica too, is always knowing that there's more to learn, and always kind of carrying this always forever the student kind of mentality into it. I think that's what really makes the great players great, is that they know that they can never stop learning.
Yeah, and trying to keep hold of that love of music that gets you into it in the first place, and not get sidetracked to a point of thinking of it as some kind of competition, some weird talent contest. That actually we all just want to make music because we love music. We're all trying to do the same thing.
It's very much like a we mentality as opposed to a me mentality. And I think that when you play music as like long as you and I have, it's you really kind of understand that. And that mentality of the we versus the me greatly influences how you play the harmonica. Because we can kind of get in our own heads and just be like, okay, let me play as crazy as possible, or let me wail. But it's really like, it's much more so like the let me support. And again, a lot of this stuff at a certain point sounds very repetitive, but there's a reason we say it so much. Support the music, color. It's because those are the foundational things about music.
Yeah, it's like the studies that have shown that we always think that we've had more influence on our successes and we've had less influence on our failures. That's someone else's fault, We're not to blame for any of our failures, but we are, the reason we had our successes. And kind of, I think playing music with other people, you can't help but at some point realise, if I played a great solo, yeah, I was doing something, but everyone else was doing, they were all doing something. I could not have done it without them, You are part of a group, aren't you?
Right, and it's this listening thing too, like, when the dynamics come down and you come down, and, if one person is doing something, let me counterpoint that, it's this constant kind of conversation amongst the band, and you can really tell when someone's not listening. Like, it's very apparent. Like the guys who like Sonny Boy Williamson's a great example. Like, he was someone who listened, because he would stop. Like, I remember Annie Raines was trying to teach me the concept of space a long time ago, and she was using Sonny Boy as an example. She was saying, like, if you listen to him, he would, like, really closely, he would snap his fingers, and that was the space. And that had, like, such a big, profound impact on his phrasing. And I just always thought that was so interesting. But, yeah, it's really let me help the music as opposed to mar it.
Yeah. I mean, thinking back, I kind of think, God, did I really think that? But I remember being almost scared when I first started a band. I was scared to put a song in the set where I didn't play harmonica. And it wasn't because I thought I was the best harmonica player in the world. It was because it was partly because I wasn't confident with my singing, and my frontman sort of, that was all new to me. But it was partly I could hide behind this instrument that was my thing. And now I love putting songs in where I don't play the harp, because that thing of light and shade and contrast and yin and yang, then the next song I really enjoy, and hopefully the audience enjoy it more,
Right. Yeah. And it all just comes from, like, the let me make this as valuable as possible. Because that's really what it is it boils down to let me say a lot, and, like, it's this idea of kind of tension. Like, people want the harmonica, but they want it in a certain quantity. Like, they don't want too much, they don't want too little, and there's a very fine line to walk there. But the more you put it down, the more you start to understand that line. I did not tongue block at all before the last 3 years.
Oh, cool.
Like, that kind of, like, I never knew how to do it. I was always pucker player. And I think it was mostly because nobody really told me.
Yeah.
And then I was listening, Big Walter Horton, and obviously, like, Little Walter. And I remember listening to, like, see, I can't even do it now. Like that thing. And I was like, oh, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, killer.
Yeah, Kim, Big Walter, like, just that fat tone he had. Just like, fucking hell. Like, so heavy.
Yeah, he was amazing. More high.
Yeah, 100%. But I just love, Kim's. I think you sort of know what you're going to get with Kim Wilson, but, like, just beautiful little phrases. Like, I'll sit and practice, try and play that boogie stuff, but trying to make those next 12 bars something interesting. Yeah. Like, I think it's so easy to get stuck playing the same licks, or just, like, the phrases. You're probably good at this because you're a drummer. Like, the phrases. I think you have a tendency, or we have tendency as players, to put the phrases in the same spaces, kind of thing. And just those little changes, overlapping a different bar here, there. Like, I love listening to him for that, and trying to get a bit.
It's also the way that, like, we were talking before about, like, just using the first 3 holes, and Jason's great at this too. But what's great about Kim is his use of the 3. And, like, making use of all of those bends. Like, you take, like, I forget what the album it's on, but he had cut a track called Bonus Boogie. And the opening of it is,
oh, yeah.
Like, that's just, it's so it sounds so easy, but the way that he swings it is just, like that's really, and that's like the same thing with Little Walter. It's the way that they were able to just kind of play in the cracks.
Yeah.
But I was listening to you playing, and that transition from going from 4 to 7 and up.
Oh yeah.
Just like the fluidity with which like Kim can do that, and William Clark. I always come back to him, and Paul DeLay also.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. 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 I used to love with Paul DeLay. There'd be times when I wouldn't know what position he was playing, and I'd be just trying to like work it out just from listening without having to kind of check. Which there aren't that many players. Usually you're like second, first, third. Like in terms of these blues guys, and they'd be like, hang on, what position is he in? Because he'd just be playing phrases. No, I'm like, where's he got these from?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's always what it comes back to when Paul is like, where do you get this from?
I want to know where he got. I want to get it. Yeah.
Curtis Delgado had this great thing that he said that because he was a friend of Paul DeLay, and he would say, he asked Paul kind of where he got that like style from. And I'm pretty sure Paul said to him like, I intentionally wanted to make my style hard for other harmonica players to follow. Yeah. I remember Jason saying that a long time ago, and I was like, you know what? That is the truest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, that is truer than any of like the pearls of wisdom from Kim or from Charlie or from any of those guys. And that was what was so great about DeLay, is like that authenticity of just, there's a rule book and, I know it, but let me stretch my legs a little bit.
Yeah. I could certainly follow it, but I'm finding a new way to do things. But yeah, using all those notes. I mean, most people learn to bend, and don't necessarily learn to use those bends on 1, 2, 3, to their full potential. Even just in a blues context. I really love teaching arpeggios. Just like let's play 7th chord arpeggios, to my students, because it's amazing how they're reluctant to like use the major third on the 5 chord or something. Like they're so used to it, they'll kind of use those notes, and then if you're like, well, let's just practice down that bottom end, and then you can use those notes as well if you want to at some point, and start building solos that kind of you just use a bigger range of notes rather than the blues scale. Like, oh, I know the blues scale, I'll just play a solo using those notes.
And what's interesting too is that, like, for people come to harmonica really because they want to play blues, so that's like kind of the first thing. I feel like in other instruments, nobody really comes to like a violin or a saxophone saying, I want to learn to play Bach, or I want to learn to play Charlie Parker. It's, let me show you the fundamentals first. Let me show you how the cogs turn. And I think that's, with learning I think that's part of the, like, it's kind of like you signed up for a party, but it's not like the theme that you wanted. Like when you get into like kind of true education, when you get into like, arpeggiating, and you get into, like the thing I always come back to is like, let's just play, like everyone knows how to play a major scale on a harmonica. In the middle octave, but who knows how to play it in the first octave? And that's I think a great, like, especially if you move up in thirds, I think that's a great bending exercise, and it's familiar territory, and first position, as simple as it looks on the kind of on the front. Listen to Buddy Green.
Yeah. I got an email the other day. From some guy who has a YouTube channel that does transcriptions of all sorts of music videos, I think. I had a little look, and he's got quite a lot of subscribers, like 350,000 or something. And he wanted to transcribe this Buddy Green video. It'll be like Orange Blossom Special, I think it was, or something.
Oh, man.
And I was like, oh, fucking hell. Because he basically said, I don't have the harmonica knowledge to know what he's doing.
And to, like, people who can tap things out like that, like, I mean, it's been great teaching to take that as a practice. Because, like, when I was when I was first starting on the harmonica, I was in, like, trying to break, Deal the Cards by, William Clark, or, like, an Easy by, like, Big Walter Horton. Like, I didn't even know those tabs existed, so I kind of had to make it myself. And then I happened upon all your videos, and then I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I think tabbing out, like, just for the average player, I think is an important part of the curriculum. Like, I think that, trying to, I was talking to Ronnie about this a while back when we did the Global Blues Harmonica Summit, that I think that a lot of the education that goes into harmonica it's a lot like, when you were in college and you need to write a research paper, you have to go to the library, you have to read the books, you have to take what's useful, and then you go to the teacher. Like, it shouldn't just be like this, like, kind of direct, okay, I'm going to search the tabs kind of thing. It should be this organic process of, let me try, let me fail, let me try again, and then let me go ask for help.
Yeah.
I think that's a very valuable thing in terms of just education. If you're just trying to learn, like, all the pantheon of great blues stuff that is tapped out, like Steady and Easy and, even like Quarter to 12 by Little Walter, or any of that stuff.
Yeah. I think the reason I started doing tabs for people was when I was working things out myself. First off, I always just loved working stuff out. Like, I love sitting, listening to something and going, what are they doing? How do I play that? How are they playing that? So I was doing that anyway, and then I'd start to write my own versions of tabs just as my own kind of memory aid, so that when I come back I go, oh yeah, it's around there. And the rhythmic side of it would always be from listening anyway. So I'd kind of, it was just kind of, those notes were just telling me, oh yeah, that's kind of where it is. And then people would start to ask, well, how do you play this or that? And I was like, well, kind of that's all I've got. So the only way I knew how to teach was to use the tab as that quick way of telling them where on the harmonica they should be, and kind of talk through the rest of it. The phrase goes like this, doo-ba-doo and be bap bap, like, I didn't know any other way of doing it. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of challenge. I mean, like, especially, going back to like that Buddy Green thing, or I remember working out Hoof and Mouth by Mark Graham, and like when you've got something that's really rhythmic, you've got that percussive sort of rhythmic tongue, I don't think he actually tongue blocks, but chord and single note back and forth. It's like, well, like, what the hell do you write down?
Yeah, like that kind of like whatever, like Pegleg Sam, like DeFord Bailey kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, well, I love that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, trying to write that down for someone to interpret.
I remember I went to a workshop, it's like, I don't know, 7 years ago or so, and it was Peter Macat. And I remember he like came in with like whatever, this like stack of handouts, and there's literally just like a picture of the first 4 holes, and he was like just showing like how his tongue was moving.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that stuff gets hard to tab out, all that kind of percussive stuff on the bottom.
Yeah. I love working that stuff out though. I haven't done it for ages now, but yeah, I used to listen to those guys. I mean, Sonny Terry just blows my mind, like trying to work him out. Like, a lot of the stuff, at first listen, you're like, I get what's going on. And then if you try and get it note for note, like, what?
I still think he's one of the hardest to really, like, not just emulate, but just understand. Like, he's just so nuanced and so, like... It's technical, but it's technical because it's so specific.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a William Clark technical or a Paul Valet technical, but it's like this. Like there's, I don't know. It's so, I'm terrible at Sonny Terry stuff. Like I remember I was trying to do like I was posting all these videos to Modern Blues Harmonica, and that was like the one category of stuff I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for like this fox chase kind of thing, like Flisco style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just I don't know.
Yeah.
I need Joe to like sit me down and just be like, okay, this is how you do it. Because again, the tongue blocking is such a huge part of that, and like it's hard to like especially if you're just coming to tongue blocking to kind of understand that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Sonny Terry. I don't think I've ever sat and learnt one of his fox chases or anything. I've always ended up giving up or just thinking, oh, Joe does it so well, I'll leave him to it. But I love it. One day I'll do it.
So do you have like I remember you were talking to Charlie about this, like modern players that you really like ones that like really like interest you?
I mean, there were so many great. I enjoy listening to like Konstantin Reinfeldt. I just love. I love his phrasing, jazz phrasing, and it's like I fucking could never do that. So it's quite nice to listen to something where I'm kind of analysing on one level, but equally I'm not thinking like that I'm going to try and learn it necessarily or comparing myself with it. I'm just enjoying his ability. But I'm really like, I don't know, I don't really listen to that much harp, and if I do, I'll just listen to kind of my favourite players.
Yeah.
I mean, what counts as contemporary? I do love Jason.
Yeah.
I do love Jason's playing. Yeah. I mean, in terms of living guys, Mitch Kashmar. I know he's not young, but I just love when he's up there, like picking out the bends, and even like between the bends, like he's like microtonal stuff, but like the vibrato, like on the 7 blow on a normal Richter tuned harp, there isn't that much room to move that note, but he just does it kind of beautifully, just does that kind of top end stuff.
Right.
Like, I don't know if it's Dirty Deal, he's got like a... But it's like that note.
Yeah.
That he just gets this like instant vibrato on it, and it's beautiful. But it tends to be, each player, there'll be something about what they do.
Yeah.
That I love. How about you?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, my contemporary guys, Hank Shreve is a big, I just think that he's a tremendous musician in general, tremendous chromatic player.
Nick Clark.
Nick Clark.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick Clark for sure. He's a good friend of mine, and he's the kind of harmonica player that will definitely put you in your place. He will very politely send you back to the woodshed, which is great. But it's like what I said before about the Frank Shamrock method. Like you need those type of players who it shouldn't be this kind of they push you off of your mooring. You want to kind of get on that level. So Nick has always been he's just a tremendous player, great songwriter too, and great guitar and singer. Philip Jers is a big one. He's of the kind of jazz idiom. I think that he's just and from the diatonic, tonally, and understands how the thing works, and is very concise and precise with the way that he presents his teaching. He has a great Patreon page. Other guys, Steve Mariner. I think he's a Canadian guy. He's fantastic.
I met him once. I lived in Toronto for a year, so I met him at something over there. Yeah, great player.
Obviously, Jason, Carlos Del Junco is definitely a big one. I would say those guys. Steve Mariner just always blows my mind. I didn't know about him until this last year, and Ronnie sent me a bunch of stuff from him. I mean, another one, he's not a contemporary one, but I don't think that he gets enough love, is Jim Liben.
Oh, yeah.
But he's just tremendous, and, there was a album that Ronnie sent me a long time ago, and of course I'm blanking on the name right now, and everyone's going to roast me. But there was an album And I remember like listening to it, and I was like, why is this so good? Like, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
No vibrato.
Ah.
And that was a very interesting, because like, you know, we love Paul Butterfield, and we love Jason, and we love you know, Will Wild. Like, we love vibrato. It's like, hell yeah, let's do it. But Jim's playing is very sensitive to that tone. Like, it's when he uses it. Like, and it's a very, very rare, I think it only happens in a couple songs. He's holding back on it because he knows how important it is. Like, he knows how much we want it. And this goes back to this idea of tension. And I like players that do that can kind of hold you in the palm of their hand, and like take you on a ride.
Yeah, they're all very good names. Carlos is another one. First time I heard Carlos, I didn't know what I was like. Where's this come from? You know, I heard Blues Mongrel, and I don't know if it's the title track, but there's this like shuffle that just like it's like really kind of like almost not going.
Yeah.
And then there's just like little lines in there. It was probably the first time I heard more chromaticism on a diatonic. So there'd just be these do-ba-do-ba-ba-ba-da-boom. I'm like, what? Where is he getting these notes? You know,
Right.
Even if it was just the bends down the bottom end, but using them melodically. I had some lessons with him when I was in Canada. Yeah, great guy, and I would have been like 21 at the time, 22, and he got me up to play at one of his gigs, and I was like in dreamland, like playing with this guy who had been listening to his records.
Have you seen the video of him doing Amazing Grace? That he changes keys
Yeah.
4 or 5 times.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
Like, kind of like a Nick Clark. He's just like, okay, time
Yeah.
to go back to work.
Yeah. So Jim Lieben is one that I only recently learned about through, I think Joe Falisco shared his album or something, and I was like, who's this guy? I'd never heard of him. And Nick Clark is relatively, just the last few years I've heard him. I just saw some YouTube clips and was like, yeah, he's got some great phrases and tone, and saw some videos of him jamming with people, and yeah, fantastic. One of my favourite guys over here is John Vaughan, who he's very much Big Walter, Kim Wilson, beautiful fat tone, and I like listening to him for that, because there are times when I get distracted by kind of trying to do something complicated or I just need to get back in that zone of repetition with variation, slight variations, rhythmic variations, substitute a note here or there, and he does all that really, really well.
Right.
Yeah, he's a youngish kind of guy.
I mean, Will Wild's another one. Like, you can't leave him off the list of modern players. He's just such a ferocious talent.
Yeah, he's immense. Yeah, vibrato's an interesting one, because I wish I could do that really intense. Like, he's got a really intense one. Butterfield had an intense vibrato. And I think you can practice these things, but I also love the fact that everyone's vibrato is a bit different, you know, and you sort of, and the way it's applied. Like, I have a tendency to put it on as a decay towards the end of the note. I don't know, that's the way I mean, that's you know, but not everyone does that. Like, some people it's like, you know.
I think that also kind of bleeds from the William Clark school. Like if you listen to, like, you know, Trying to Stretch My Money, like the whatever second 4 bars of that, when he goes da da da, and then he waits and waits, and then it comes on at the end. I think that's like Pat Ramsey was great at doing that too. I like those players that kind of, like I said, like hold you in the palm of your hand, and like, it's not that it's unpredictable, it's that like you kind of know what you're gonna get, you just don't know when. Yeah, very true. I like practicing slowing down a vibrato as well. Like, how slow can I get my vibrato before it stops? Before I stop able to pulling from deep, and I have to do it more as a jaw thing. I can't remember who I was speaking to about this. If it was, I think it was maybe Rolly Platt. We were talking about that slowing down the vibrato. At what point does it stop kind of being useful? Being a vibrato. Like an existential question, but also like when it stops being useful and nice sounding, you know, and kind of getting it to tempo with the
the music and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. At what point is it just kind of like?
Yeah.
At
Like,
what
what's
point
that?
is it just like another note?
I'm just intermittently bending a note. Yeah.
Right.
Kind of randomly.
Yeah.
But because I have a tendency, I'll kind of.
Yeah.
It comes at the end there, you know, especially in a certain context, you know.
That's also like a Mickey thing too.
Yeah.
Like, Like when you're playing like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and those like.
Yeah.
I also like guys who can quiet it down. But like when you come out of it dynamically, not just from a kind of tempo setting, but from when you literally are just.
Yeah.
Like when you really kind of pull out of it, I think that's so cool. You know, in blues, like with the thing we were just playing, it's kind of hard to like put in those ornaments. But yeah, it's a great practice for people. Is like if you're play with the dynamics a lot.
Yeah.
I remember Dominic Miller, who's the guitar player in Sting's band, who's been by his side forever. He told me he was working with a guy named Jason Rebello, who was Sting's, after Kenny Kirkland died, he was his piano player. He still comes around like a studio player. And he had this great piece of practice for Dom. He was basically saying, like, if it sounds good when you're practicing, then you're not doing it right. And Dom was like, well, what do you mean by that? And Jason's advice to him was essentially to practice without dynamics. So every note has like the same tonality. Like they're all equal. There's no kind of flavor on it. And this kind of goes into a little bit of like just sticking to the three holes at the beginning. But practicing that like a little, like just as like kind of, it's not even staccato, it's just like each note has no personality. Then when you start to put the personality in, that's how you really find your identity. It's like what makes sense. And then by doing that, you're also practicing your technique.
Yeah. I think I've heard Jason Ritchie talking about practicing scales and kind of isolating a certain thing that you're... practice them all the same volume, no vibrato, no, any kind of ornamentation on it, and then kind of practicing everything with X, Y, Z feature added, and I think he talks about this kind of taking back control of your playing so that you're not just, say you always, like I might have a bad habit of always putting vibrato on like the 3-draw half-step bend or something, like getting rid of that bad habit, not that you never want to do it, but taking control of it again, you're playing the instrument rather than it playing you.
Yeah, because, what we want to get away from is kind of like you get into a mouth, again, like it's this, your mouth, it's a muscle memory thing, like it's really hard to unlearn something, especially when you can't see it. Like it's not something that like you're unlearning with your fingers, it's with your mouth. And your mouth likes certain movements on the harmonica. I remember Dave Barrett saying something about like, if you take like one note on the harmonica, like there's like an infinite amount of ways you can play it. Like you can play it, like if you take like 3-draw, you can play it with vibrato, you can play it 3-4 combination, like, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And I remember I used to have students that I would like give that exercise to, like take one note and just like see how many different ways you can play it. And then you've got that on every note on the instrument, so you've got so many different... Then it doesn't start to look so limited.
Exactly, I think dynamics is a big one that I love teaching dynamics and talking about dynamics, because I've found through teaching that so many players, if you think of the range of kind of volume the instrument can get, so just thinking volume, not even intensity at this point, just from kind of 0 to 100%, so many of them are playing up there that you're missing this big range of potential that the instrument has. And I'll kind of get a student to practice playing things so quietly that they can almost not hear them themselves. And it's not that they'd necessarily ever play that volume with a band, because they probably just wouldn't be heard, but it's about expanding that range so that they're not always there. There may be, you know, because it's so easy to everything the same when you could where you kind of just like the first few notes are a little bit quieter or whatever, or from phrase to phrase, or from solo to solo, or from song to song, you know, adding a range of dynamics, yep. You know, because it's very easy to just be on that one level all the time.
Yeah.
And I catch myself doing it, especially with a band. Yeah. It's easier when you're just like playing on, you know, just playing the solo harmonica thing, but with a band, if you're worrying about getting heard and also you're distracted by other stuff that's happening at the gig,
right.
You end up just like bash, 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 every note is this, you know, like just smash it out.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, it's not just, you know, for us as harmonica players, that's like a universal musician struggle is dynamics, and like with blues, because it's so important, I feel like it's just something that's not really talked about. What I used to do with my students was I used to have them go through like a 12-bar phrase, and I would have them on the one chord play like very quietly, like so like they would play. So like that alternation between, and this goes back to like kind of having control of your diaphragm, is how to turn it on and how to turn it off. Like how much air you put into it like actually really affects the tone.
Yeah.
And it almost always sounds better when you're using less air.
Yeah. I like that idea of pick a, you know, do it on the one chord or whatever. Good little practice. Because then
you can start to put in kind of what you were doing, like where you have like those little pops.
Yeah,
like those pops of like accent.
Yeah.
And then I think that like it's an awareness thing. It boils down to, you know, it, like you very correctly put, am I playing the harmonica or is it playing me?
Yeah. Well, Jason Ritchie, 2019, I'm giving him that. I don't know when he said it, but I like that idea of taking back the control kind of thing. I love that as well as changing dynamics on kind of a slow blues. Again, like that idea of pop, but kind of in a more open kind of environment of like a slow blues. Again, Kim Wilson, if we're thinking that kind of boogie style, part of the variation that he'll have from one, you know, he'll like repeat a phrase, but the phrase will change slightly, but also the something dynamically will change, and I just love that, you know, the infinite variation within a finite sort of sphere.
Right. You ever hear the barbecue sessions?
Yeah.
So I forget what the name of the song is. It's like the second song on the CD, and I just like the dynamics that it's
who's that with again?
Big Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
And the dynamics that he as an accompaniment player puts on, let alone in his solo, like in this acoustic setting, is just you could spend days with it.
Yeah.
Literally days. There's like that whole CD is goldmine of dynamics and phrasing and just just really, especially if you're an acoustic player, you can't miss it album.
Yeah, I was going to say acoustically, you know, it's great to hear him acoustic. You know, most of the stuff I've got with him is amplified. I mean, I love his amplified tone, so can't complain about that. But yeah, great to hear him acoustic as well. I'm going to have to go and listen to that again. But dynamics, something always it just seems like, to me it seems such an easy thing. It's so quick to address. I mean, it takes a lifetime, of course, to master it, but everyone can improve their dynamic range right now, today, you know, somewhat, just by becoming conscious of it. So much of it is about being conscious, being mindful of what you're playing. You know?
And a big part of that, like what we were just doing with that jam, like a big part of it is sensitivity in the accompaniment player role. It's like, you know that you have to come down. Like if you're soloing, I can't be playing.
Yeah.
Like you have to be sensitive to the people you're playing with, and the more that you play with other people, I think that the more conscious you are of your dynamics. And I think being like an accompaniment player, like this is why little Walter was like so great, because he was used to backing up Muddy. Like he was, that was kind of the crux of what made him him. And like Muddy's intensity, like if you listen to like 40 Days, 40 Nights, if the intensity is up here, Walter's going to go up there. And that's like 101 musicianship. It's where are we going?
Yeah.
And like where do we want to resolve? And where are we starting? These are all like philosophical, like very important things to ask yourself when you're first like getting into playing music.
Dennis Grunling did one of his online kind of workshops on Little Walter as a sideman, and I attended it. It was fabulous, just picking apart what he was doing, and every song there's so much to get into. Just absolutely love what he did. But you're right, you know, especially like when you're playing with another harmonica player as well. Obviously it's not that common apart from in just a jam setting like this, but you're kind of thinking, I've got to play something that, you know, like if they're playing the rhythm down there, I don't necessarily want to be playing those same notes in that same octave as them, you know, and if you're on the same key harp, so, you know, if you're kind of down there, then I might be up here, you know, playing something higher kind of thing. All those considerations that you've got to take into account.
Right.
Thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, man. And, you know, I have subscribed to your channel for a very long time.
Cool.
So this was very cool, and I'm very happy that I'm here in London to do this with you in person. I think it's really cool.
Well, I hope we meet again.
We will. We most definitely will.